Hi everyone, it's Highlights from Ukraine podcast, your daily audio summary of the latest news reported in the Ukrainian media. This is our 400th episode, and I would like to thank all of you who have stayed with us for more than a year, following the development of the full-fledged Russian invasion and wider life in Ukraine. Special thanks to those who sent us tips via PayPal and to all our Patreon supporters. Their monthly donations of $5 and $12 really help us to keep going and plan our work. Thank you, friends. If you want to support us as well, you can find the links to our Patreon and PayPal in the notes to this episode. My name is Artem, and here is the news. For 372 days, Ukraine stands strong against the forces of the Russian invasion. According to the General Staff of Ukraine, overall Russian losses since the start of the full-fledged invasion exceeded 150,000 people, 3,300 tanks, 480 multiple-launch rocket systems and 300 aircraft. Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, Oleksiy Danilov, said that Russian forces are losing 7 times more soldiers than Ukrainian forces on the Bakhmut front in the Donetsk region, reports Ukrainska Pravda. Yesterday morning, the governor of the Bryansk region of Russia said that a group of saboteurs from Ukraine entered the territory of the border region, opened fire at a car, as a result of which a local resident died and a child was injured, reports Suspilne. After that, the Russian security service, the FSB, said that armed Ukrainian nationalists who violated the state border are being neutralized in the region. Photos or videos that could confirm this have not been made public. At the same time, Russian President Vladimir Putin called the events near the town of Sushany in the Bryansk region a terrorist attack and cancelled the trip planned for yesterday. Ukrainian border guards stated that they have no information about the infiltration of the saboteurs into the territory of the Russian Federation and fully control the situation at the border. They also said that Russia may resort to provocations to discredit the defense forces of Ukraine. Meanwhile, the so-called Russian Volunteer Corps said that it was their fighters who entered the Bryansk region to show compatriots that free Russian people with weapons in their hands can fight the regime. They denied allegations about attacks on civilians. Russian Volunteer Corps is a military unit of the armed forces of Ukraine formed from volunteers with Russian citizenship. One of the fighters in the released video, Alexander, is a Russian who has been living in Ukraine since 2017 and joined the volunteer formation since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Spokesman of the Ukrainian military intelligence, Andriy Yusov, referring to the video, said that the events in Bryansk region are a confrontation within Russia between citizens of Russia and evidence that the people of Russia are beginning to wake up. Later in the evening, the FSB of Russia announced that Ukrainian nationalists were forced into the territory of Ukraine and a massive artillery strike was launched against them. Russian MP Alexander Hishstein said that during the search for the saboteur group, a vehicle belonging to the National Guard of Russia exploded after triggering a mine, reports Hromadske. 4 National Guard personnel sustained minor shrapnel wounds. Hishstein shared a photo of another mine which he claimed was found near the site of the incident. Over 500,000 people were likely mobilized in Russia, despite the government's claim that no more than 300,000 people were called to serve, reports Kyiv Post. According to the investigation by the Russian outlet Mediazona, journalists were able to count the approximate number of mobilized based on the number of expedited registration of marriages in Russia. After the beginning of the mobilization in September 2022, the men who were mobilized were allowed to get married on an expedited basis instead of waiting for months. It gave their wives the right to government payments in case their husband dies at the front line. Thus, the marriage registration rate drastically increased in 2022 in comparison with the previous year. Mediazona counted an estimated number of mobilized men based on the information from 50 regions, where almost 25,000 men who received military summons got married. After analyzing the information about the number of unmarried men of military age, the journalist came to the conclusion that nearly 240,000 men were enlisted in these regions, and nearly 525,000 men in total were summoned all over Russia. The expedited registration of marriages continued even after Vladimir Putin stated in October that mobilization has ended. The US is expected to announce another package of assistance for Ukraine on Friday, 3rd March, reports TSN-UA. According to spokesman for the National Security Council of the White House, John Kirby, the package will include mostly ammunitions that the Ukrainians will need for the systems that they already have. He provided no further details. Ukraine is in the top 20 of influential countries in the world, according to the Global Soft Power Index, reports Interfax Ukraine. Over the past year, Ukraine added the most points among all countries, ranking 37th out of 121 countries in total and 19th in terms of influence. In terms of recognition, Ukraine has risen from 47th to 14th place. The reputation of Ukraine has shown a moderate improvement. The growth of the indicator is restrained by respondents from Asia who believe that the reputation of Ukraine has somewhat decreased. Ukrainian LGBT activist, founder of the Women's March, the head of NGO Insight, Olena Shevchenko, became one of Time's Women of the Year, reports NVUA. The editors of the magazine have traditionally chosen 12 women who have contributed to the protection of human rights this year. The authors of the rating call Olena one of the most recognizable human rights defenders in Ukraine. Olena Shevchenko is fighting for the most vulnerable sectors of the population of Ukraine, the publication says. We call on you to demand from governments of your countries to impose the toughest sanctions possible on Russia and its citizens to stop their invasion of Ukraine.